Take it away, Bob.
Okay, welcome everyone to Softex Tech Brew. And this evening we are going to explore the co-working area, and Brian will introduce the speakers in a minute. I'd like to start by telling everyone kind of what Softex is about and why we do what we do. Softex is about creating connections between people in our community. That's our primary goal in the process. And we'd like to bring people together to talk about interesting topics like the co-working topic that we're talking about this evening. But that is our ultimate goal, is to create Softex moments where people connect, discuss brilliant ideas, and develop business within our community. And with that, I would like to turn this over to the brewmaster for the evening, Mr. Brian Schwartz.
Thank you. Let's see what happens if I stand up. We're using this
Turns over to you.
owl. This is a beautiful, amazing, probably very expensive camera. Thank you, Greg. And we are at Story Labs in San Luis Obispo. This is where we're broadcasting live. And Story Labs in Atascadero is also here, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, and more in the future. So our featured speaker tonight is Greg Squires. And Greg is the president and CEO of the Parable Group. Greg has been a SLO resident for 21 years, started at Cal Poly, from Sacramento, got his industrial engineering degree. And he figured out how to stay on the Central Coast, which is what a lot of students struggle to do. He started by working, he spent 10 years at Shopatron, and then he had a small stint between that working for a company remotely. In fact, Shopatron, it's worth mentioning that company started from a tech brew, Softex moment, is what we call them. And the two founders, Ed and Sean, met at a Softex event. So it just kind of validates how valuable this organization can be. With the desire to lead and shape local businesses and local experience, Greg took ownership of the Parable Group, which is the business that is right next door to Story Labs. He took ownership in 2018 from the original founder, right? And he founded, in the process, he's also started something called Pivot Point Retail from within the company, the Parable Group, which is focusing now on the indie retail market, providing them with analytics and collaborative marketing. He serves on the Atascadero Chamber of Commerce, where he also lives, Economic Advisory Council. He also serves a variety of volunteer roles at Atascadero Bible Church. He's a connector, collaborator, and a convener. Look that one up. I had to. He finds the greatest joy in working together in teams to create meaningful things in the world. Story Labs Co-working was founded in 2021. I started working here in December of 2021 at the beginning. And you'll hear today more about Greg's passion for connecting and cultivating the common good. So welcome, Greg, to the Tech Brew stage.
Thanks so much.
And let me pull up your slides.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, it's really fun to be here and kind of have this group come and join a conversation really around economic development and community development. So yeah, Story Labs began late 2020, early 2021 with a conversation with a friend when he said, yeah, I've been thinking about co-working. What do you think? I said, well, so have I. And we had the opportunity to open up our first pilot location in Atascadero a little over a year ago. And that space has grown and people have joined as members. And then I'll tell the story of kind of how this San Luis Obispo location got started. But really the tagline that we've expressed as sort of why does Story Labs exist in the world? Why is it in SLO County? Is we believe that people with their life and their work are looking to perhaps discover a bigger story. And so as we've gone through our journey, I'll talk a little bit about the co-founders who have been on the journey with me. You know, we enjoy the work that we do. We enjoy the community that we live in. And we just want to be able to share that and be connected to others in meaningful work. So go to the first slide. I'll talk a little bit about some of the problems that we see. Go back one. There we go. So, you know, the sentiments that we hear from workers and leaders Leaders especially say the words, I feel alone, right? It can be difficult, challenging to lead an organization, or you're working remote and you feel alone. I want to build something meaningful, but I don't know how to get from here to there. I heard from Lorelei Capel, the Economic Development Director of Atascadero, that the Central Coast has the highest sole proprietor rate ratio of anywhere in the US, which was surprising to me. The highest ratio of so basically there's a lot of sole proprietors here per capita, which if you think about it, and if you've been around a while, you kind of think about the friends that you have or the workers that you work around or with. You've got to have your own means of producing income or having your own gig, right? Small or large. And there aren't a lot of large employers, which means if people are working here, they're working for small employers. But on the Central Coast, how will people move from I'm working in a thing to perhaps I could start a thing? There's a gap there. There's a challenge, a step of risk or of confidence to get from here to there. Remote workers can often say working from home is nice, but it gets old after a while, want to be around people. That's not for everybody, but it is for many. And then some people say that I feel energized and inspired when I work alongside others who do work excellently. So when you're part of a company, you can be with others and you've got kind of a shared, mission and a shared identity. But when you're working remote, you're often lacking that. So separately from worker and leader sentiments, which I would say are kind of global or national trends, but are acute here on the Central Coast, SLO County has some acute challenges and economic priorities. So there's an intent to create head of household jobs. Reach Central Coast is doing some great work, both advocating and researching what it means to bring San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County economic development priorities together. Suzanne's here today. You'll hear from her in a bit. She's representing economic development for Santa Maria. And I'm sure you've been aware of much of what Reach is doing. So head of household jobs, large employers closing or leaving is a problem or challenge. Dave Morrison is here, a longtime friend that worked at Shopatron with me. He's the CFO. I learned a lot from him. We both were part of a journey for a tech company that grew from a founder that met at SoftTech and then grew and sold to private equity. And within 2 years, from 2016 to 2018, most of the jobs, but a few were gone, were then moved to county. MindBody, large tech company. It has now been acquired, and the jobs are slowly leaving the area. So what if you live here and you want this place to be a flourishing community economically? What do you do about that? Well, I don't think you stop the sale of companies. I think you just have to have more stuff. And that's where hearing Bob and the mission of SoftTech, it's like, well, there's a common mission here, wanting to create connections that will create economic development. Cost of living exceeding wages. I think that one's pretty straightforward. It's a high cost of living to live here. Housing prices are exceedingly high, and then barriers to home ownership. So there's some pretty significant economic challenges in the county. And I think we all kind of know that. But if then co-working or a community-based mission to connect people and inspire entrepreneurship and then strengthen those workers and leaders to create meaningful companies, corporations that scale well, how would you go do that? So Story Labs doesn't intend to solve all that. Story Labs intends to be one positive player in that ecosystem. So, as I was thinking through this, what effectively are we doing? Co-working for the common good is at the intersection of commercial real estate, the sharing economy, remote work trends, and you can kind of stop there and say the co-working business model is real estate arbitrage, right? You gotta pay rents, and then try and charge more than you're paying per square foot, and perhaps it can be profitable, and it can. I mean, there's a way to run a co-work just from a pure, P&L perspective.
It's a good diversity.
Sure.
Within a single.
Yeah. And I'm not a real estate developer or expert in that area, but there's more that can be done. And what we're doing with these spaces in the county is we're asking, how can we contribute to the common good that's both economic and community development? So when we say discover a bigger story for your work, we're also saying perhaps you could add purpose and connectedness to your work. So that's what the next slide will say. So our invitation is whether you're looking for productive workspace or collaborative community, or both, Story Labs invites you to discover greater purpose and connectedness in your work. So purpose and connectedness are intended to address the challenges that people are feeling of loneliness or separation from others, or not really having purpose in, what am I doing and why? So we're bringing people together around shared spaces. Yes, we need to be productive, got to get our work done, but perhaps we could learn to be more creative and more communal in having lunch and learns, where we come around this table right here and we share, say, hey, Megan, you're our member that's going to share today. Tell us about a marketing program that you ran last week. You're an expert marketer. Tell us how that went. And everybody that's sitting around the table can learn from her as an expert. So we're building community and connections through creativity. And we want to offer more than coffee and fast Wi-Fi. We want to have community experiences and events and groups that allows people to connect. So we've got 2 pilot locations, one in Atascadero, actually on site at Atascadero Bible Church. So there's a large facility, 2-story facility on the street just by the high school, just adjacent to the freeway, that we're up on the 2nd floor. We've got about 3,500 square feet that is dedicated shared office space. And Jeremy Leduc is on today. He's our host at the Atascadero location. And great to have him as both part of SoftTech and Story Labs. So we've got these 2 locations here in SLO. We're looking for other locations. We just got started in 2021. So we're a little over a year old. Both spaces have pretty well filled out. Private suites have plenty of demand. People want those. We've got some dedicated desks. I'll show you a model in a minute. But we're open. We're open to perhaps scaling from Paso Robles to Santa Maria, where members can have access to have, meetings in Santa Maria in the morning and meetings in Paso in the afternoon with clients. If you live out of Atascadero, but you need to work in SLO for the day, I'm one of those. So, just having the flexibility of multiple locations is a pretty attractive draw. And SLO County is, not one major city, but it's a connected network of cities from pretty much Paso to Santa Maria.
Well, nice to have a home base if you're going to Santa Maria, like there's a familiarity, there's some comfort there. You're not just going from coffee shop to coffee shop or
Right.
bar to bar.
Right. Yeah, so I'll breeze through the rest of this. I want you to meet Joe Priola. He couldn't be here tonight, but he's our host and community manager here in SLO, the certified coach. He and his wife, Allison, serve as mentors in this space. Next slide is Tom Nearing. He's a co-founder with me. He's got the Atascadero site managed, and he's done a great job with building community there. So those are the other people involved. Not doing this alone. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our programs. We've got some work development programs and connections that we're looking to make. So I was part of a program development course last summer, and they led us through a process to basically develop a flywheel. If you want to build a community, do something that's going to build upon each other. And so starting at the top, expand imaginations through story. As people share, here's what I do, here's why I do it, it helps people understand part of that bigger story. And then we're connecting humble and ambitious builders, those that are seeking to create meaningful organizations that are intended to grow and also serve. And then facilitate these transformative groups where people can come around tables and understand who they are and who they were made to be. And then that drives this transformative action, which might involve starting an organization or scaling an organization. So that's kind of the ecosystem we're starting to create, which will look like in time, an incubator, an accelerator. We are sort of attracting the types that are interested in going on their big vocational journey to start something. And we also are doing vocational mentoring. So as I mentioned, Joe is a certified coach. We've got a number of mentors and coaches, really just helping people figure out, what am I doing? How do I want to do it? And what could I do next if I'm perhaps in a vocational transition? And executive coaching, we organize some leadership development events around these tables as well. But we're also connecting common interest groups. So educators, artists, developers, community leaders, as they join our community, we're saying, hey, come be part of a Story Labs work group and share a lunch or share a topic. What we're doing tonight is representative of just that, which is why we love to host these things with and for local organizations. So we're just, again, focused on creativity, collaboration, cultivating our gifts so we can become better workers. Culture making is a lot more than just space. Culture is about people. It's about vibe. It is about look and aesthetic. But ultimately, why do you stick around in an organization? It's who you're working for and who you're working with. But with remote work, that is a great solution for helping people to live here and work from elsewhere. But there's a disconnectivity that comes as a result of that. So we're looking to help fill some of that gap. So I'll show you a little bit of our pricing model, and then I'll wrap up. So we've got, you can come swing by for a day pass. We have a handful of those, every week. People just drive from San Francisco to LA and they buy a day pass and pop in and work here for the day and tell their story and carry on. But we really see our core customer being those that have a dedicated or private suite where they're able to be here the majority of their week, join in on collaborative programs. And we're able to have mentor or coach sessions as they are willing or wanting, those types of relationships, and participate in our group trainings and workshops. So I'll finish with this. This is something that has kind of guided what Story Labs is this idea of social enterprise. So this spectrum, all the way on the right, traditional business, pure profit, seeking to drive financial value for stakeholders. All the way to the left, traditional charity, primary drivers to achieve social value, charitable funding from grants and donations, et cetera. A social enterprise really is seeking both financial return and social impact. And so that's effectively what Story Labs is. It is a business. It has an income stream, but also has a mission, and a mission to serve the community. And so our intent as we have profit is to give back to the local membership, whether that be in startup grants or investments in their business, or just hosting events and having food that allows people to come and be part of something as they're on their early stage of the Story Labs journey. So that's working. We are cash flowing and we are able to serve our members. And part of a social enterprise like this is it also attracts people that are willing to come and work and help for the cause, right? So a lot of our hosts are volunteer, or we offset some of their rent as they're able to contribute to the community, host some of their own events, or connect people to come and be part of what we're doing here. Cool. So that's it. That's Story Labs.
Well done. Thank you.
We have time for questions.
So according to the agenda, we're going to give Suzanne a little bit, but she doesn't have any slides or anything. And then we'll do questions. So can you hold them, Steve, until
Suzanne doesn't need slide sheet. Glows from the other side of the room.
hang on a
Thanks,
second,
Steve.
Suzanne.
Anytime.
Turn off this. Stop share. Sorry, guys. Okay. So I'm going to read Suzanne's bio. And thank you for coming all the way up from Santa Maria.
Of course.
And you do say up when you come north.
Yes.
Our next speaker is Suzanne Singh. She's provided leadership to the Chamber's Economic Development Commission since 2017. She was previously the president of the Rancho Santa Margarita Chamber of Commerce in Orange County. And she successfully rebuilt that organization and attracted new business to the area. Through the Economic Development Commission, Suzanne provides business support to businesses in Santa Maria. She promotes Santa Maria as a vibrant economic hub. She's passionate about working with local businesses, and we're very grateful that she made the trek up here. So welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. That was great, really great. I think what I'm supposed to come in and talk about today is just the benefits, or maybe advantages, disadvantages of co-working spaces. So I just put down a few little jots because I'm one of very few words. I like to listen more than talk. But I just wanted to go through, and I love what you're doing. I think the social enterprise is really valuable. And I think that when you hear it that way, it comes across differently than the normal traditional co-working spaces. But I will say that for an employer, these kind of spaces are great for them because they eventually are spending less money on office space. Just kind of, I mean, as we're talking about how expensive things get, this is an easier way. Also, I think it helps them keep their talent because that talent can come into a place and have that culture that they need. You work remotely and your company is down in Carlsbad. So for you to be able to come into a place like this and be able to talk to other people is really valuable. And it will keep you working for that company, where if you were just at home doing it, it may be a little bit different. And you would find something that gave you more of that culture. So I think also for companies, businesses, it offers great flexibility. One of the things I've heard, and we've all heard this since COVID, working from home, you'll hear people say, I love working from home because I can run and do laundry, I can do this, I can do that, and I'm still working. And it's given them a better quality of life down the road because their weekends are freed up from doing their normal chores because they can hit some of that while they're working, you know? I mean, we all, when we were in the working space, we all took bathroom breaks, phone calls, personal stuff. So you're doing it at home, you're just able to do a little bit.
And you don't
more.
have the commute anymore.
Right, yeah.
And that's a biggie for some people.
It is, it is. It
Big
saves
time.
them a lot of time. And so they're able to do more. And so their quality of life. So I think that that helps employers actually hire talent or retain talent because that talent has that flexibility. But it also, one last thing I'll say for the employer side, because I think we break it down into three things: employer, employee, and then a region. So the employer side, I think it offers them an opportunity for a better talent pool because they can do it globally, which it's becoming huge.
Much farther reach.
Right, and if you think about it, if you're here in, let's say, we'll use SLO County, we're not going to use Santa Maria because I'm not there, but let's say you're a company and you're here in SLO and you cannot seem to find the talent you need. 10 years ago, you'd move your company where the talent was.
Right.
Now you can move the talent to where you are just because it's remote work. So I think it's been beneficial for the employer side. For employees, like I said, better quality of life, flexible schedules, you know. I think we have a lot of younger working people these days with children, and I think giving them that flexibility, allowing them to work remotely 2-3 days a week, and then maybe going into the office is ideal for a lot of younger workers. And then they also have opportunities to work globally without leaving their home. So I think it's really important. And then as a region, when I look at attraction and trying to keep businesses in the area, it's always about talent. It's always about talent. And now we're able to attract companies and say, you can have, you know, broadband and you can have whatever you need and you can do things remotely.
It's no longer a good excuse.
It's not. And so it takes one of those real heavy issues out of, it just takes a problem out of the thing. So that's really all I have to say, but I will say just a few more things. Glenn, you know, sends me with a list of things that he thinks should be important too. So I think one of the things Glenn hit on is he said, you know, there's positive and negative on every side. You know, what comes up with remote work and co-working spaces is great, but then it also, you know, it can, this is his biggest downfall, and this is why I like what you're doing on social enterprise, because the biggest downfall of doing remote work and having companies that are hiring our talent, let's say they're not here, you're lacking the mom and pop shops, the ones that have a storefront, that have their logo on their door, that really donate out to the community. You know, you'll see a lot of your smaller companies be heavily involved and engaged in community and supporting and donations. And I think those will go away with the more that we do of the remote work. So I think that's, you know, and that's a scary thing for a community, that they're going to lose some of that engagement from the business support. So that's probably the only downfall that we kind of saw that was a negative.
You mean those businesses putting money into the community?
Into the community.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, and when you had said, you said something earlier about just being able to give back, and one of my probably best stories in Santa Maria right now is our dealerships. You know, several of them are building new dealerships, and so our Toyota dealership moved over to a new location, and when they built this new location, they planned to be a community venue. So they've got a whole upstairs that is just gorgeous. The bar, the kitchen, it's catering, it's everything. They've got it all up there, and they let the community use it. They don't charge them, they let them.
Wow.
And they have a conference room for, I think, up to 50 people that can fit in the conference room. They planned it that way.
That's very
their way of
forward
giving,
thinking.
but that's their way of giving back to the community and making sure that they're a part of what's going on. And these things are important. You know, their employees still go work there every day, but I just think when you're talking social enterprise and you're figuring out ways to bring the cultures together. It all helps. So I like what you're doing. I think it's great.
Business is still based in the community, whether or not their workers are remote. So I think it's a pretty poor excuse to not keep giving back to the community.
Well, except that if the workers aren't there and they're not out in the community, they're not spending in the community, they're not as engaged. And yes, the business might, but they may not if they don't have workers saying, hey, I really like this organization, or can you support this soccer team, or can you, so it's different.
I see what you mean, yeah.
So it changes the dynamic there.
I'd say there's a flip side too, because all of a sudden with remote work, there's more head of household jobs potentially here.
Yes,
I'm giving more back to
absolutely.
the community than I ever have. And I've been 90 days in a remote only position.
Yeah, and that, how many of you know someone that in the last 3 years has relocated to the Central Coast and they can now work remote? Like there's a lot of those that have done that, and I think even more to come with remote work flexibility and ability to relocate here. But what you're getting at is this idea of, does the worker have a sense of place? And do they have investment in and commitment to their local economy? So it sounds like you do, right? So why do you care about your local economy when you are working for perhaps a company that's not based here? What's your desire for that?
I have children and it's a great community. I grew up here. I want to see it thrive. So of course I want to do that.
Yeah.
Any way I can.
Yeah.
With local organizations and wages, you're not necessarily going to get market value for your skill set if you're not in a metro area. I think places like this change that dynamic, tilt the scales back towards knowledge workers in a way that wasn't available just 5 years ago.
I think it was available, it just wasn't common.
Right.
As accepted it is. And the employees were not in the driver's seat. The employers were.
COVID reinvented the technology for us culturally, not physically, but culturally. And so one of the questions I had of Greg is that you talk about the culture side, and I think it's critically important, and leaders of businesses spend a lot of time talking about the culture development that they go through in their businesses. I'm curious what happens in your model when there's no hot desks left, because it's all filled with people that are transplants from the other locations that are chewing up that space. And does this mean that we really ought to be serious about taking a hot desk now so we have reserved seats?
But bunk bed desks.
That just means you're gonna open another one, right?
Yeah.
That's true, right?
Well, I mean, we just had one open in Grover Beach. Now, again, the different co-working spaces, I think, have different models. I really like Greg's model a lot better than the pure real estate play.
Yeah.
Which is basically a way of coming up with how do you rent your space.
Yep.
And I think there's a huge difference between those two. And I think business leaders will see that. They'll understand the difference of culture development versus real estate purchase.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so how do you build culture in a co-work space? I think that's the experiment that we're playing. We're trying to figure that out. And I think it takes a lot of event planning, a lot of initiative, a lot of intentionality. Think about, culture in a company. Every time one person leaves and a new person comes, that can change culture, especially if it's someone that has a strong presence, and for better or for worse. And I think in a co-work, it's actually even further accelerated. Like there's a lot more in and a lot more out as you have people dropping in, or you have, but to your point about some dedicated kind of culture makers that are, creating that positive presence. So part of what Tom and Joe have been really intentional about is inviting people who can be that kind of culture maker in a space to be planted there for the purpose of being a member, but also, creating that kind of culture. As an employer, I think about culture making all the time. How am I creating affinity for the employees in the space that I'm curating? So we have events and we have, gatherings, and we have company meetings, and we have vision, and where are we going and why are we going there? That's a lot of hard work to build that as an organization. I think it's really hard to do that in a remote context. I think some employers are really challenged right now where their identity was built around the office. And then COVID disrupted that. And there's been some intent to come back to the office, but there's been a lot of resistance to that actually happening. Some people have moved away. So I think actually like corporate office culture is being redefined right now. And company leaders are really challenged, and they're either being really intentional about trying things, or they're realizing, this is going to be really hard, and we're going to just be this hybrid thing, and there's going to be the in-office people and the remote people. But I don't think that story's fully been played out. And I think similarly, we're experimenting with how do you do that with a shared space where you don't work for the same organization, but you share the same place. How do you build culture and connectedness there?
You use the term Story Labs work group, which work group is actually a cultural term. But I didn't know what you meant. Did you mean a location? That's a story, like this place is a Story Labs work group, and what Tascadero
Yeah.
is a work group. Is that how you're using that term?
Yeah, I'd probably more precisely say common interest group. Yeah, so this is a common interest group. It's all around a common interest of software technology. We have business leaders that are getting together around their common role. And so that's more the need there. And then as we do lunch and learns, there isn't necessarily a common interest, but there's a common topic, right, where we're learning together.
Two questions are sort of interrelated. Could you tell me approximately what percentage of your income comes derived from the real estate, subletting the space right now of your total revenue? Just
Yeah, like
approximately
90%.
I thought it was pretty high.
Yeah.
Second question, what do you consider your valuable final product? What is your group producing in the way of a quantifiable product
Yeah.
that you can take to the marketplace? Maybe you can talk a little about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I do management consulting as well, so I'm an architect.
Yeah, well, do service businesses all have a product?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
in your language, in your construct, every service business has a product. that it
yes.
creates.
Not everyone is aware of the valuable final product.
Yeah,
But they all sell a product
sure. Yeah,
nonetheless.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you knew what yours was.
yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I could talk for a minute or two about it and see if
Give me
we'll
30,
get there.
60 seconds.
But yeah, I mean, discover purpose and connectedness. I think that is an intangible product. So from a kind of impact perspective, from a social enterprise, we would hope that our customers experience greater connectedness with others. So that is an intangible product. I think in a more tangible way, similar to what SoftTech intends to do, is create connections. So what would happen is you've got a marketer here and a developer there and an entrepreneur business leader there. And they get to talking over a table like this, and an idea forms, and they go, well, we should take action on that. And it's actually sprouting an organization, a venture that becomes an employer that creates jobs that allows for the greater flourishing of this Central Coast economy.
And we
Like,
call
so-
that a soft tech moment.
We can, sure.
A Story Labs moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Story Labs
not a new
moment, that's
idea,
No,
but what happened was you created the garden where those entities could come together. They desire to be there. They're seeking connectedness with others. And then their imagination allows them to think, what if I could do the thing that I really wanted to do? As I understand my own gifts, talents, skills in a greater way, perhaps I could participate in this thing, contribute to this thing, and perhaps be employed by this thing. So we're trying to build this ecosystem, not just of workers, but of leaders and entrepreneurs, and in time, an investor community that would be able to come around these new ventures as we host pitch events and say, here's something that's incubating from Story Labs, and we've got 3 presentations, and we invite local investors. That's of a different stripe than what would happen in the Bay Area. You know, this is just
Money
different
is
economy.
money is honey.
Yeah.
Tracks
Do you
us.
have a way to gauge effectiveness of how you're delivering your valuable final product in the marketplace yet?
Probably not.
Okay, I just wondered.
Yeah, not yet.
well, I have another question about the economics, probably more for Suzanne. If you have an employee in Santa Maria who commutes to San Luis Obispo to work, and you have another employee that goes from San Luis to Santa Maria to live, it costs about $400 a month, which is equivalent to about $2.50 an hour, plus the employee got back 2 hours in that process.
Yeah.
That seems like a pretty easy sale to me for a $200 desk. I mean, I see
yeah.
the economics here of one that says, you know, if we have a Santa Maria business that has a bunch of people from San Luis, or a San Luis business that has a bunch of people from Santa Maria, mind body comes to mind
That's what came to
instantly.
mind. That's what they did. They had
Right,
all
they
this
opened an office there
in
because
Santa Maria.
they had 200 people commuting from San Luis Obispo up and down Highway 101,
Yeah.
in front of me, by the way. But I think that's the other dynamic that we have to start looking at, is that it improves their quality of life. It gives them 2 hours extra with their family each week,
It helps you retain that employee.
and it gives them a pay raise of $2.50 an hour right off the top, not counting the real estate difference if you have to, you know, bump up from 500 square feet to 1,000 in order to keep them all in the same building. So there's a lot of dynamics here that I think are really interesting, which is why I really love what you're doing with the culture issue, because I do think that culture is not dependent on a business plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's already happening. I have employees from Paso to Santa Maria, and they don't all come in here every day. We want to have some kind of weekly touch point, as I talked about culture and place to convene together. But yeah, being able to save on the gas, save on the time, be home with kids, you know, we have a flexible workspace, but I have some employees that go to Atascadero to work from Story Labs, so they don't have to drive, you know, 20 minutes every day. So that kind of flexibility is already kind of happening for my context.
You stated a statistic that Central Coast was the highest percentage of sole proprietorships, I think you said.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how that study defined the Central Coast.
Yeah, we'd have to ask Lorelei. I mean, she said SLO County.
I thought you
Oh.
said Atascadero.
She said SLO County.
Oh, SLO
She's,
County.
yeah, Economic Development Director for Atascadero. And I don't know any more about the study other than just that she shared that stat with me.
I think of the Central Coast as like Paso to Orcutt, but I saw some wines from Livermore that were Central Coast wines.
Well,
Most Central Coast wines that are bottled in Livermore are grown here.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's how that comes
here.
about.
I see.
yeah, I mean, Monterey to Ventura would probably be the broadest
Yeah,
definition of Central Coast.
Yeah.
That
The
makes
state
sense.
board of tourism actually defines it as Lompoc to Santa Cruz.
Oh, really?
Really?
Okay.
South of Lompoc to about.
We
Santa
gotta
Monica.
broaden our horizons, Bob. Santa Cruz.
But that means no halama burgers, evidently.
That may explain why this is the highest rental rates in the United States right now.
Why do
along
you think
the
so?
coast, because of the number of sole proprietors.
Hmm.
I was just interested, the reason I asked that question is over time, you're gonna need to gauge the performance of what you're doing.
Yep.
So there may be some measuring sticks. that you-
Well, I think an idea, as someone who's been here since December, is just looking at the number of businesses that have come through here, or individuals, and, you know, seeing the fact that they flourish as a result of coming into a co-working, or even sustain themselves, because quite honestly, if you don't have a place to meet with customers face to face, and once you have an office, your rates can go up. The reality is you're just taken a lot more seriously as somebody who's not going to be gone tomorrow if you're a freelance marketer or designer or something. So, and then I would just stress the inclusivity of this location. That has been the most noticeable thing for me. It's a very inclusive environment. And I would not say that about all businesses and organizations. First time I started coming to Tech Brew about 7 years ago, it was not an inclusive group. I came in and I did not feel welcomed at all because I was new to the area. And I got the cold shoulder from everybody. So, and that's not a knock on SoftTech, it was just, or Tech Brew, that was the reality of it. And I got involved and that was part of the thing, but I don't want you to lose that inclusivity. It's such an important thing. It's why I go to my yoga studio. It's why I go to my barber. It's why I come here. The moment you start making people feel like they're somehow not don't belong here is the moment I'm gone.
You need a barber?
I just go because girls love me.
Can you tell us how it actually works? Do you sit in the same spot all the time or?
It depends when you get here. If my spot, I do have a spot, and we're creatures of habit, so I have a tendency to go back to the same desk. I have no problem sitting on the other side or somewhere else. But it's a hot desk, so anywhere you got, and if I'm coming in for just a couple hours, the tables in the middle don't have power. So the cool thing is, you're not gonna stay here too long. In fact, if I don't bring my power cord, I know I'm not gonna stay here more than a couple hours. But no, you float around and, maybe you'll get some different ideas if you sit in a different desk tomorrow. But, yeah.
No fist fights.
No fist fights. The only thing that's the dynamic that's a little tricky, and this would be where you bring someone into the picture who's different and approaches things different, is like the music. So it's a very democracy when it comes to choosing what music's been playing. But if one person were to come in, I sometimes feel that way. I'll come in and now I'm going to change the music because I just got here. That would start to piss everyone else off. If the moment you came in, you somehow changed the music. So it's like one of those things Joe has to just sort of, that's why we've got Joe, is he's sort of monitoring, is somebody doing something unintentionally that might be rubbing people the wrong way?
Sounds like a culture maker. I show up and I change the music.
You have to change it from the parking lot. before you come up.
Well, I'm just saying that's the one thing, but it's been nice because we're all learning how to work together. I think that's the whole thing, this great experiment that Greg was talking about. And they're listening and they're adjusting. And again, they're not afraid to step up and say something when something doesn't quite feel right. And I think the biggest challenge from all this COVID and being remote and everyone pulled out of the offices is the fact when they come back to being around other people, they've completely forgotten how to behave. They are saying things that are inappropriate. They're not picking up on the social cues. They don't have mentors. Like, I think the biggest challenge, I will tell you, my brother in New York, he goes into an office every day that's built for 80 people in New York City. There's 10 people that go to that office. The reason why people are not going back to the office is because most of them will have an hour commute into the city. So when they got to go home, they got rid of that hour commute each way on the subway and public transport. It's a whole different world when you have to do that.
Yep.
He said the biggest thing that he's scared about is that he came up through with mentors and people guiding him. All these young people, how are they getting guidance from anybody if they're all working remotely? And that's kind of a scary thing because they're not getting trained in the unspoken things that you pick up. And I mean, it's all about, that's a big part of getting ahead in the world, right? So I think that if it's purely on what you know, we're in for a dark future. Like, it's just what you know, and it doesn't matter how you behave or who you have been kind to and things like that.
Yeah, or what you produce, right? Machines are measured by what they produce. And so if the workers have become machines and we're measuring them by what they produce from a distance, video screen, sharing your face or not, that's a lot of what COVID work had to do. And it was measured by what are you producing? Because that's all I can see.
But almost all the knowledge workers ended up going remote because they were the easiest to move remote, even though they depend on that culture piece. I mean, I work out of my garage, okay, and I'd have a tough time here because I have 100 inches of monitor. So there are some logistic issues that you have to work out, but I think that's the other part of the equation is a lot of people work better in social environments.
But I'll go back to saying, I think in COVID, a lot of employers were worried that production would go down and their employees would not be as productive. And I think what they saw after time was that productivity was as good, if not better. And those employees found they didn't work a full 8 hours and they were getting more done. So I don't know. I
think the downside is much longer. It's going to, if the downside turns out to be as strong as some might suspect, it's going to take years before it will be evident. I mean, I wonder, there's an intersection, right? A lot of companies have policies about use of the electronics for, while you're at work, right? You're not allowed to surf the web and so on. You're at home, people are surfing the web. You
Start
know,
businesses.
do they become less empathetic because they're in their cave at home? I mean, I think what you're doing is good, but I don't think maybe it has to happen where there's a bit of a full cycle where the remote workers are then encouraged to come into places like this so that they have more human interaction. Because I think there is a real danger for certainly knowledge workers of a certain type that may not have great social skills. If they're working at home, we talked about mentoring, lack of, but I think other daily social interactions and, you know.
Taking a shower,
Could be a big
deodorant.
problem.
I wonder if businesses are doing that, though. I mean, they would be wise, like, if their workers have all been remote and there's a bunch in Santa Maria and they're based in Paso, to have a little space like this size, a little
Yep.
hub
Yep.
for their workers to go to, even if it's the company's hub. And that would obviate the need for
Well, they were.
socializing people.
Pre-pandemic, I know they were. I mean, I actually was involved with a company that was started about 5-6 years ago, and we went into a WeWork space. The company's headquartered in Texas and Dallas, and we went into a WeWork space and then ended up actually moving to a different co-working environment. And then with COVID, and so the people who were local came into that space. We don't have enough concentration of employees in any other geography to do that yet. But in this one space building in Dallas, Salesforce had half of a floor. So, you know, they were approaching it that way. They may have had to, I mean, that may have just been a substitution from building their own micro office, you know. But I think to your point, there is that opportunity. I don't know how frequent.
Do we have any questions out on
Yes,
Zoom?
speaking of inclusivity, anyone out there in the remote world, Zoom, have a question or want to chime in on the conversation? If so, unmute yourself, please. Teresa, Karen, Shania, Guinness, Peter, Cheryl, speak now.
I will just chime in and say, whatever this camera system is you're using that follows the speaker, it's amazing.
Yeah, the product is called the Owl. And it's a tall, skinny owl-looking device with two creepy little eyes staring at you.
Oh,
Yeah, and a funny little nose. But yeah, it's worked well.
It really changes the experience at this end.
and I'm guessing you can get VR glasses and you're basically like you're in the room, right? That kind of reminds me of a VR.
When's the metaverse tech brew happening? I'll join that.
You know, when you make it that easy for people to show up and they're physically, they feel like they're there. Like, I do know that kids are already having birthday parties with VR. Like, you can only come to the party if you own one of these VR headsets.
Wow.
It's kind of scary, but that's how these kids are having parties now. Well, we're cruising right along with our agenda, and there'll be plenty of time for Q&A after. Bob, should we move to the next section?
Sure.
All right, so next thing is just to thank the speakers and finish the Q&A. So Greg and Suzanne, we really appreciate you guys chiming in, and what you've been doing here, Greg, has been great. And now Steve Burgess is going to give us the joke of the day. Try to tone it down a little bit from before.
Last week was a little bombastic and
He was a little excited.
involved alcohol, but
Okay.
not in me in the joke. All right, I'm going to tell a couple of one-liners. Okay. All right. How many programmers, Nancy, does it take to change a light bulb?
Can't be done. It's a hardware problem.
There you go.
Repeat that.
None. It's a hardware problem. All right.
That's a good one.
There's a new band called 1023 Megabytes. They don't have a gig yet. All right. All right. So this is actually my favorite of the quick 4 one-liners. In order to understand recursion, you have to understand recursion. I don't hear any laughter, but
You gotta be smart for that, Joe.
it's a meta. All right, one more. An SEO expert walks into a bar, a pub, an Irish bar, canteen. All right, that's it. Those are all that's my one-liners. That's my
Oh
one-liners.
my gosh, well done, Stacey. Thank you very much. And then, Bob, you've got a few minutes to talk about tech pitch and networking.
Yes, I would like to stress these points. We have a process within SoftTech called Tech Pitch, which is an effort to help do the connections that you just talked about, which is you find the maker and the marketer and the components to build a business. Tech Pitch is an effort by SoftTech to be able to reach out to our entire list and say, we're looking for these types of people. The second part of this is actually coming out of Santa Maria, and not surprisingly, but a lot of manufacturers are re-examining their supply chain. And we're finding that there are demands for product manufacturing that exists, let's say, non-domestically. And so there's a big effort for being able to move that to a domestic supplier. So there's efforts to try and put together groups to go after particular product manufacturing in the area that would be, driven by the needs of the businesses in the community. So there's an effort to do that. But the other thing I wanted to make a point of it is that SoftTech is about networking of the humankind. It's always been about that. It's about the first introduction, first meeting of people. So I'd like to open it to everybody that would like to do a introduction of themselves and what they're currently working on as part of putting together the networking of the pieces here, so that after the Tech Brew is over, we can leave the channel open, and if people want to connect with each other and discuss opportunities, they can. So I'd like to throw that out onto the table and see.
Maybe
if
start with
anyone-
the Zoom people.
Let's start with the Zoom people. Let's put them first. They've been second all
Just
the
going
time.
left to right. Teresa, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us what you're working on?